Welcome to another episode of Daddy Confessions. Hey, we in there. I got a new episode today. This was actually recorded before Thursday because if you're watching this on Thursday, that means you're not watching the Commanders or the Redskins
That's
if
right.
you're old school. Whoop up on the Bears, and I hope that ages as well as I think it will. So, we today I have with me uh a good friend of mine, somebody who I have known. I can't believe it's been 10 years already. I think it's been at least 10 years already.
Yeah,
Um,
about.
and
Yeah.
yeah. And so I have with me Pastor Bernard, who is thank you for being here today. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself to the people. Go right ahead, introduce yourself to the people.
Oh man, listen, you thinking me. Thank you for having me. I feel so honored, man, to be able to sit with you for Daddy Chronicles, man. Listen, I've wanted to do this for a while, so thank you for the invite. But as John said, my name is Bernard. He over refers to me as Pastor B. That's because I'm the executive pastor of a church called Liberation Church. John and I met, yeah, almost 10 years ago at our previous church, which was Life Builders Church of God, where I was a minister there as well. And so, yeah, man, it's been about 10 years, and so obviously because this is Daddy Chronicles, I am a father of three times. I've got two teenagers, a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old. My son, my name's Bernard Bird. He'll be 14 coming up in October, and my wife and I are expecting a brand new baby in February. So I'm a
All
time
right.
daddy.
All right. Well, Pastor Bernard keep calling it Daddy Chronicles, and that could be the AKA, also
Oh, I'm
known
sorry,
as
Daddy
the Daddy Chronicle.
Confessions.
It's all good. It's all good.
I'm
It's all
sorry.
good.
Yeah.
We chronicling here too. So, but it's all good.
Let
And,
me make
and
sure I get it right. Daddy Confessions. I
Daddy
apologize about that.
Confessions. It's all good. Tonight, what we're doing is we are just chatting a little bit. I want to talk to Pastor Bernard about his experience as a father and everything that he's experienced over the years. So you have two and one on the way.
Hmm.
What they it's almost here. It's almost that time, right? And
Hmm.
so you got two teenagers, and y'all started over. You started over, and you got a
Yeah.
new baby coming down, Pampers and all.
Yeah. I keep joking with my wife, man. I'm like, man, I ain't never retiring. I'll be forever, man.
Yeah,
Gotta put
well,
these kids
it's
through
a
college.
yeah, well, it's a blessing. I'm glad that I'm glad it's you and not me. You know what I'm saying? I know that
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing, and your new baby on the way is a little girl. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a little girl. So two girls and a boy. He's stuck right in the middle. An older sister
There
and
you
a
go.
younger sister. Man, I feel bad for that
There you
boy.
go. He'll make it. He'll make it. That middle child is a different kind of child. I heard. I wouldn't know. I ain't got one of those.
Yeah, me
But
either. So I've heard. I guess I'm gonna learn firsthand here soon, right?
that's right. That's right. Well, I have the reason why I wanted to do this as a spotlight and not just an opportunity to talk about a specific topic is I think that you have a very unique experience that I wanted to capitalize on a little bit, right? Being a father of teenagers from another from a previous relationship, and
Mhm,
now being married and having a baby on the way.
mhm.
You have a very unique perspective than I think that any others fathers that I've had on the show thus far. And I wanted to have a chance to talk a little bit about that. But as we talk about that, because you come from because of that, you come from a situation where you already have, in my opinion, you've already kind of realized the kind of father that you are, right? And I
Mhm.
and I say that because I know that's going to change a little bit when the baby comes. But tell me a little bit about how you would describe yourself as a father currently.
You know what, John? I mean, I want to add one thing too, and I also bring the perspective that I was raised without my father around, so I'm a product of a
Mm.
single parent household, and so now I'm being a third time dad, in a situation where I've had two children from a previous relationship. Now adding a third child, it is a very, very interesting dynamic. And I would say this, dude, where I'm at now in life. So Mackenzie and Bernard, those are my two older children. I was much younger. I was 21 when Mackenzie was born. So I was 21-year-old. I just got into my career. I've got Mackenzie is 15. So I've been a police officer. I've been in law enforcement for it'll be 16 years coming up here soon. So when Mackenzie was born, I had only been in the police department for a year, 21 years old, and man, law enforcement it's a that's a tricky battle in itself. And so trying to navigate fatherhood as a very, very, very young man still trying to learn himself while just starting in a demanding career field was difficult. It was difficult. And then I turned around the next year and had a son. And I'm careful never to blame any shortcomings or anything like that on my chosen profession, because it's allowed me and afforded me to take great care of my family. But the one thing that I would do different, that I've already vowed I'm going to do different this time, is be more present. You know, I was always around for the kids, but just being around doesn't mean that you're present. You
Mm.
know, and so sometimes, you know, when I joined the police department, obviously I worked on the street for a little while, but pretty quickly I became a detective. And so I went from, having a set schedule to being on call and working later hours and being away from home a little bit more than I would have liked. So there were some times that I was missing. There were some times on Thanksgiving where I had to go. There were some times on Christmas where I had to be out on the street protecting other people's families, while my family was home while I was working. And so now, some almost 16 years later, it's afforded me the opportunity to even grow as a man. And this time around, I'm so thankful to God that I do have an opportunity to do this again, so that I can be all those things that I wanted to do the first time that I really didn't really wasn't in a position to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I mean, it's interesting. You don't know how important that is for me personally to hear, because it speaks to something that I have been honestly dealing with in my life, which is, what does it mean to be what does it mean to be present, right? Like,
Hmm.
what does that look like, feel like? And um you can get to a point where you are so wrapped up in trying to be the provider that
Hmm.
sometimes you forget to be present.
Yeah.
um and that's a very real thing, and trying to balance that is extremely important. um And so I appreciate you sharing that. And that's a gift that your older kids are benefiting from, I'm sure, now as much as they possibly
Hmm.
can,
Hmm.
as teenagers. And it's a gift that the baby will benefit from as well. And you have that gift that's been given to you of
Yeah.
time to understand that, and now be able to provide that. And that's
But man,
something that.
John, you hit on something very key too when you talked about the financial part, like being a provider. First of all, that's ingrained in who we are as men, right? But I'll add to it, like I said, I grew up with my father not being present. It was just my mom and my sister and I. And so having my mom be a single parent. So my mama didn't have a car. She never drove. And so I grew up in DC. So we caught the bus and the metro everywhere. But I'm always, I'm always, always careful to make sure I give my mom kudos, man, because without having a car, my mother never missed a beat, right? So when you talk about the financial part, though, about being a father, here is why being a child of a single parent is so important. It's one of those decisions that we have to have. Because I watched my mom be the provider, right? So when I became a father, it was so important to me to make sure that I provide, right? To make sure that my kids always had everything they needed, because I never saw a good example of that because my dad wasn't around,
Mm.
right? And so because of that, there were some overtime assignments that I probably shouldn't have taken. I probably should have been at home, right? There were some extra hours that I probably should have pushed away from the desk and went home. But your journey, the path that you take in life, is so important to what you become. And I think sometimes we don't necessarily go back and say, you know what, I did this, or I thought this way, or my perspective was this because of my path, because of my journey. And so because I watched my mama struggle, I was never going to be a father that would have a woman struggling because I didn't do my part to provide financially. And so for a lot of years, man, I worked myself crazy. I worked myself to the bone, taking on extra assignments, working. I mean, and so there would be times where I would work so much, I'd be home, but I'd be tired.
Yeah.
So I'm physically there, but am I really being present for my kids? And I will never forget it, man. There would be sometimes I'd be so tired I'd fall asleep in the recliner. And my kids, just because they wanted to be close to daddy, they get up in the recliner and just sit there with me. Right?
Yeah.
Our physical body is there, but am I giving them what they need emotionally? Am I providing
Wow.
what they need outside of the financial part? Right? I've always been a great provider, but I tell you, if I'm being totally honest and transparent, there were some seasons where I didn't provide all the other stuff that is necessary that a daughter and a son needs from their dad.
Mm. Wow, man. Look, whew, whew, that that hits hard for me because I don't know. I'm not sure if you know this. I mean, people who have watched all the episodes of the show or back to the first couple of episodes. I mean, I grew up without my father as well, and so
Mm-hmm.
what I've talked about often with my wife and in therapy is that look, I don't know what it looks like to be a father. I had
Mm-hmm.
to learn from television what it meant to be a father, what it meant to be a man. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't really have all of those people there to show me those things. So what I internalized was I didn't want to be what my father was, which was absent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
Mm-hmm.
my version of that was or has been to make sure that my family wants for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so in doing that, you same thing, sometimes you come home and you fall asleep on the couch, and next thing you know, the kids are going off to bed and you then miss the whole evening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very real thing, but it also is one of those situations where in some ways I feel like, well, I'm doing the thing. You know what I'm saying? They
Mm-hmm.
got they
Mm-hmm.
got the roof over their head, we got two cars. My mother didn't drive either. You know what I'm saying? My mother and my sister and I, we caught the bus everywhere, carrying grocery
Mm-hmm.
bags and the whole nine, right?
Yep.
And they don't ever have if they don't want to. That's an experience for them, not a
Yep.
reality for them, right?
Yep.
And but is there something else missing for them? And that is something that I'm constantly uh grappling with, right? Like am I
Yeah.
am I doing
Yeah.
all the things um in line with what they would want or what they would need? And that's so, man, thank you for bringing that up and talking about that. I think that's hugely important. um and in terms of the that piece of it, right? And I heard you preach about this once. Is about breaking the generational curse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is in line with this whole idea of not being that absentee father, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being
Mm-hmm.
there for the kids as much as you possibly can. Um, are there any other aspects of you as a father that either now at this point or early on when you were, when your older ones were younger, that you were like, well, I'm not going to do that because, or I'm going to do better than that? Are there some other elements that you can think about or things that popped into your head at that time? No, I was thinking
Yeah,
back a
man.
long
Listen.
way, but
But you know what? It ain't going back a long way. But man, listen. Here's what I learned over time. Like even the decisions that we make now, and I think I alluded to it a little bit earlier. You can find John as a kid in your decisions that you make now. Just like I find Bernard the father in my decisions that I make now, right? One
yeah,
of the first things that I always vowed I was going to do was be affectionate with my children because that was something I missed, right? I missed the affection of a father. And then you have the world that teaches men to be void of emotion and not be affectionate. And
right,
so at the moment I found that I was going to be a father, I vowed then that I'm always going to be physically, emotionally, and spiritually affectionate with my children. Every conversation that we in, I remind my kids I love them. Every conversation, it's like clockwork. Even if we're talking, even if it's through text, I just say, "Hey, all right, talk to you later. Love you guys." And here's the other part. Every time I see my kids, we physically embrace each other. There have been a time since they've been on this planet that when we first see each other, we don't hug each other. And it's so routine to them now. If I don't go to do it, they just do it because that's been a routine. That's all they've known from their dad is that my dad's going to tell me that he loves me, that he's proud of me, and he's going to hug me every single time. Even in those times where I've had to chastise them or if one of them has done something they're not supposed to do, I end that conversation with a hug because I want them to always know the how important that is, right?
Right.
To be physically affectionate with your parent. I believe that there is first of all, it's a bonding experience. I also believe that to your point about that sermon that I preached about breaking generational curses, that sermon was deeply personal to me. Listen, I'll tell you right now, if no person in the church, amen myself, because I really was almost preaching about my own journey, right? It was deeply personal to me. And I think if you remember back to that sermon, I talked a little about um, you know, the latter generations having to forgive the earlier generations, even when the earlier generation doesn't, there's any to be forgiven for.
Mhm.
Sometimes we've got to go to God and ask for forgiveness for people outside of our own journey. If you truly want to break the curses that are assigned to your life. And so fatherlessness was assigned to my life. But here's the ironic thing, John. My father had his parents till death. My grandparents, my paternal grandparents were married until they left this earth. So fatherlessness was not an experience for him. But he made a
Mhm.
choice. He made a choice with me that I'm just going to be, I'm going to do me,
Right.
right?
Wow.
So he didn't even have that curse assigned to his life from his parents, right? And
Wow.
he introduced something into generations of Jones men that he didn't even realize. And so
Right.
I knew that it was God's destiny for me to break that curse. That it
Wow.
could not go beyond my generation. I heard a quote say it this way one time, and I wish I knew where the quote came from. But the quote just simply said, "When you teach your son, you're teaching your son's son." And I said, "My
Mm.
God, wow!" And that's how I've tried to live as a father. When I teach my son, I'm teaching my son's son. That's really
Right.
how you break the curse.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful, man. And again, that's the same thing with my father as well, right? Like
Hmm.
he grew up with both his parents right there.
Hmm.
Both my grandparents were still alive and never saw him. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
like
yeah,
so I didn't know them either, but they were both with him, and he made a decision that definitely set the Bonham boys men down the path,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
that's something that's been really important for me as well, and I received that because it's that affection piece is something that is important to me, and it's very sad that my youngest son don't like to be hugged or kissed by his father. Wyatt is not, he don't like the affection that I try to
Okay.
give him, but we working
Yeah.
on that, but
Yeah, man, you
but
got
yeah,
you just keep it up. The consistency, he'll get used to it.
yeah,
I listen,
yeah, that's
and go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to add too, because I don't want this to turn into a situation where it seems like I'm just beating up on my dad because he wasn't around.
No, no, no.
The other part too that became so important for me was that I had to forgive him. I had to forgive him and be okay so that I wouldn't then take that into the situation with my own children.
Right, right, yeah,
And I'm happy to say, and I give all honor to God with this, that my father and I we have reconciled, and he is a part of my life now, and he's part of my his grandchildren's lives now, and there's times, man, we talk, and the other thing is we've been able to have a very real conversation about how being absent affected me,
mm,
and it was great, man. It was really great. It was a long time coming. I was an adult when the conversation happened, but it was definitely something that was needed, right? And we just don't know how those things affect our generations behind us if you don't address it.
right. Wow. All right. Well, I guess I got an assignment right there because I'm still struggling to have conversations with him, to be honest with you.
Man, no,
So
listen, I get it. I get it. I do.
yeah,
I get it
yeah.
because you
I
start
mean,
to ask yourself those questions. You wonder, like, what was it about me? Like, why did
Right.
you choose? Like, when you had your parents there, right? My paternal grandparents, I tell people all the time, I think we should all feel this way. My paternal grandparents, my paternal grandfather, his name was Frank. We called him Grandpa Jones. I always say my grandfather was the greatest man on earth, right? I watched him because my father was 18 when I was born, so he was young, just like I was, right? And so I did have the honor of being able to see my paternal grandparents before they passed away. And I watched my grandfather. My grandfather was a coal miner, so he moved my father's family to DC from West Virginia. He worked the coal his whole life. I mean, I watched my grandfather, really work himself to death to provide for his family. And they didn't have a whole lot, right? But he was an awesome provider. They never missed a meal. He took care of the whole family. And so I often say, and I've even had to share this with my own father, that the lessons that I learned about fatherhood, I learned from my grandfather,
Mm,
not my father.
mm.
But it still affects you different when it's not your father.
Right.
Because what
Right.
what grows from that sometimes is that again, that lack of self-esteem, that like that where you say, well, what was it about me? Was I not good enough that my dad wanted to be at my football game or be at my baseball game or whatever that thing was, or help me with the science fair, right? And
Right.
when we go back to what you brought up a minute ago about those curses, that's why it's so important to go to God and say, you know what, God, I'm repenting on behalf of those before, because they might not know, but at the same breath, God, I'm asking for forgiveness.
Right. Wow. Wow.
You you you
That's
don't you don't know what you don't know.
right. Right. No, that's right. That's right. Man, that's powerful. That's powerful. And I appreciate you sharing that. Whew, man. Tell me tell me a little bit about um some of the things that you wish you or one of the things that you wish you knew about being a parent before
Mm,
your kids were born.
man, you coming with the heavy hitters. This is the- the- these ain't those surface questions you bringing there, brother. One one thing I wish I knew about being a parent before my children were born. Oh man. So I wish I knew I wish I knew how to handle adversity.
Mm,
I wish I had the playbook for how to handle adversity before they were born.
mm,
What do you do the first time your kid lies or steals?
mm.
What do you do the first time your kid says, I hate?
Wow.
I wish I had the answers to those things before they ever breathe a breath on the earth.
Right. Yeah, I mean those are tough. Those are tough. I mean, I think I'm dealing less with the I hate you and more with the lies, right? That they are still in
Yep.
that early stage where they don't understand that like their lies suck. They
Hmm.
suck at lying. Like I can tell when you lying and it hurts because you feel like you need to lie to me instead of just telling the truth about whatever the
Yep.
situation is.
Yep.
And that, and I've always told my boys, I was like, the worst thing you could do is lie to me. Your integrity
Hmm.
is all that you have. Like that's one of the most
Hmm.
important things that you have. And as soon as that is lost, that's hard to get back.
Hmm.
Hard to get back. And there's nothing that you could say that would make me more upset. Nothing
Yep.
you say or do will make me more upset than when you lie to me, because it's that lie that is the thing that makes me the most upset about a situation. So,
I always tell my kids, a lie is the gift that keeps giving.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It never
And it
goes
takes
away.
so much energy. Yeah, it takes so much energy to lie.
Yep.
It takes way more energy to lie than it does to tell the truth.
But you know what, John? That's the other
So,
thing too. That's why I say, even still, even in the sight of adversity, I still always remind them, right? But I love you. Okay, you lied. I know you lied. There's going to be a consequence. But don't ever forget that your dad loves you,
right, right,
right?
right.
There's
Yeah,
nothing that's going
that's
to
good.
break that bond. There's nothing that's going to be so big that the love is lost, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's important for them to know because at the end of the day, that that love is what will carry us through any situation, right? And so knowing
Mhm.
that when you make a mistake, when you do something wrong, like, you can tell me about it because I love you enough to work through that, right? And
Exactly.
this and that's the key to it, right? Knowing that when you make a mistake, you're gonna make a mistake. And I always tell my boys, and some people might say that it's not the right way to say it, but this is the way I say it: is don't be sorry, be better. And
Exactly.
what I mean by that is take the opportunity to be a better version of yourself. You made a mistake, that's cool. Don't don't be sorry about it. It
Yeah.
happened. It's done now. We can't undo it. But what you can do is make sure you're making better decisions the next time. Making
Exactly.
sure that you are being a better version of yourself the next time. Because it's going to come up again. Something else is going to happen. Another moment going to happen. You're going to forget to do your homework. And instead of lying about it, you know what? I'm going to do better next time.
Hmm.
I'm gonna try harder, and that's what I always tell my sons. Like, that's more important to me than you never gonna be perfect, right? And
Right.
that's okay.
Right.
And so I don't care whether it is perfectly done. I just care that you are trying your hardest, that you putting
Yeah.
forth the effort. And if you're gonna lie to me about it, then you just put all your effort in the lying. I don't love that
Pretty
at all.
much.
So
Yep. But the thing that's so important is that so when that circumstance comes back around, because it's gonna come around again, I just need the kids to hear their dad, and I need my kids to hear daddy saying, "But I support you and I love you."
right, right, right,
Right. So
right,
when you get a chance to do this again, don't make the bad decision. Do it the right way, and I'm supporting you. I'm here. I'm
right.
cheering you on. I'm always on your
Yep.
team. Right.
Yep, yep, yep. That's how it should work. When we want our kids to understand that, and hopefully they will, have that voice in the back of their head forever and ever. Right? That's the,
Yeah. I
that's
hope
that's what
so.
we want. That's what we want. That's what we want. Um. So man. So you got two. Again, back to the ages of the kids. So you got two older kids. They are essentially teenagers, preteen, teenagers now,
Oh, they
teenagers now.
they're teenagers, 15 to
They full
13,
blooded, full blooded
full blooded
teenagers
teenagers.
now.
Yeah.
And what are some of the lessons that you have been most, or things that you've had to have conversations with them about that most surprised you?
Wow. That most surprised me.
That you had to have, like, you were not ready for that conversation. You didn't think that was coming down the pipeline. It was surprising to you that you had to have that conversation with them.
Yeah, honestly, so with the two older kids, it was probably truly an uncomfortable conversation. What's to have the conversation about why their mom and I didn't work.
Mm,
I
okay.
never, I always, because I've always been present, and they've always known dad and their mom and I. So my kids from the two previous relationship, I mean, their and I broke up. Oh, I think Bernard was 2, and he's getting ready to be 14 next month. So it's been a
Okay.
long time. And so over time, it's just like, oh, well, I guess they ain't gonna never ask. They don't want to know, And because I'm doing what I'm supposed to do with the dad, it's just like one of those things that you just kind of put in the back of your head.
Right.
But actually, and honestly, it was recently where I had to had a conversation to say, listen, because your mom and I didn't work, and it didn't change my relationship with you guys. That's really what the context of the conversation was, just to letting them know that even for me too, honestly, if I'm being transparent, I had to learn how to be a good dad and not feel like I had to be in the house with them. And again, that's just one of those traumas from not growing up without your father, right? Honestly, their mom and I, and their mom and I, we were like high school sweethearts. We started dating in high school. What do you know about love in high school, right?
Right.
So we as the older we got, the worse things were for us in our relationship. We had no business being together. That is just the absolute reality of it, right? But for me as a father, I had to learn that the failure of this relationship has no impact on the relationship with my children.
Right.
And so that thing, man, when we had to have that conversation, I had to say to them, listen, guys, I, the relationship that resulted in your birthing is no indication and has no implication on our relationship as father and child. And it's really because they're old enough now as teenagers to kind of start asking those questions. I just never
Right.
saw it coming.
Right. Right.
Just
Right.
never saw it
Right.
coming.
I
Man,
can see
that
that.
thing, I
I
was
can
like,
definitely see
oh God. I wanted to change the subject and talk about football or something.
that. Oh man, yeah, I mean that's definitely a big deal, right? Like being able to articulate that to them at a point where they are now starting to understand, right? Because
Mhm,
there was a time probably when in their world either some of the people around them didn't their parents weren't together, and so it
mhm.
wasn't unusual for them to see that, but as they get older they start to feel like, well, well, so what did happen? So like
Right.
what is going on?
It's like, dad, so like what's up? Like, what's going on? And the thing is, and um their mom and I, we don't always see eye to eye. Nobody ever always sees eye to eye, right? And so if we
Right,
exchange words or things are a little bit icy, I needed the kids to understand though, like, look, yeah, your mom and I, we don't always see eye to eye, but that has no effect on us. Like, we
right,
always gonna be us. I'm always gonna be
right,
your dad. I'm always gonna love you. I'm always on your team, even if things are a little rocky between your mom and I right now.
right, right,
You
right.
know,
Yeah,
those were tough
yeah,
conversations to have, real tough conversations.
yeah.
Because as kids, man, listen, the natural reaction for a child is to want to defend their mom.
Hmm.
The natural reaction for any child, whether it be a boy or a girl, is to want to understand what's going on with their mother,
Right.
right? And I know this is a daddy confessions, but it has such a major impact on the relationship of the father and the child if you don't address it.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you don't make it very clear as a father, listen, I'm always going to be your dad. You're always going to be my daughter. You're always going to be my son. And whatever happens over here, it's got nothing to do with us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a big deal, and it's a very important conversation to have with them so that they understand that it's not about them. Like it don't
It's
have nothing to
not.
do with y'all. It was us.
It was
We were
us.
trying to figure out who we are,
Right.
and so what that then leads to is hopefully them understanding the importance of going through a process of understanding before you make decisions, and in this case
Hmm.
very big decision, right?
Right.
um
Right.
and that's it's a thing that we know not every young person takes to heart or thinks about when they make decisions. I'm already starting to have conversation with my boys about making sure that if they're going to be in a relationship with somebody, that they truly understand what it means to be in a relationship with somebody. And they only 6 and 10 right now, 6 and 9, but understand
Man,
what does it mean to be in a relationship, right?
you gotta
It's
have those
work.
conversations. The
Yeah,
pace of the pace of the world and the pace of life has increased so drastically from when you and I
right,
were coming up, man. Like I
right,
always I
right,
always say this. Obviously, I was a youth pastor before. And so one of the things that I had to learn as a youth pastor is like, man, these kids, they going through so much more than what we went through when we were coming up, right? When
yeah,
I was coming up, I was just worried about getting home before the streetlights came on. And the neighbor
right.
downstairs snitching if I stepped outside when my mama was at work. You know, these kids, man, at 13, 14, 15 years old, they're dealing with real life, what we would have called back then adult situations.
Yeah,
The world
it's
is so
true.
advanced and they're so advanced now. You got to start having these conversations earlier, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very, very true. So with all that said, and that there's a little bit of like I wouldn't say doom and gloom in that part of the conversation, but there's definitely some obviously concerns from like as parents, like we get concerned about our kids, right? And that's an important part for us to have that level of concern about our kids and try to help them work through all the issues that they deal with in their lives. But my next question to you is, what is something, a moment in your life from parenting that is the one that has been the most joyous to this point, like the one, like a moment that kind of stands out to you as like your fondest memory, your favorite memory as a
Yeah.
parent so far?
So I gotta give you two because they're different from my daughter and my son, right? So for
Yeah.
me, my greatest moment, and that was when he had to do one of those tell me about your life kind of projects, and for my son, it was, and I've since changed my mind because I really don't want him to be the police. I really don't. I think I want him to do anything but be the police. But when I realized that he admired me the way he did because of my chosen profession. And then when he did his project, he's like, I want to be a police officer just like my dad when I grow up. Man, it made me feel so great. It made me feel so great. Like, man, my son really he loves what I do, and I'm a role model for him. And he has, and here's what I loved about it. Because if we like right now in 2023, law enforcement is a very, very vilified career. It is not probably not many people who are going to say, yeah, that's what I want to do. Here's what I loved about it the most, though. I love that all in an imperfect career, because it truly is, right? We got a long way to go in law enforcement.
Hmm.
While serving in an imperfect career and an imperfect justice, especially people who look like you and I, my son still looked at me and said, but I think that's honorable because my dad's doing it.
It's
Everything
fantastic.
that's going on right now.
Right.
Because my dad's doing it, I'm okay with it.
Right. Right.
I
I
want to
mean,
do what
that's
my dad's doing because my dad's doing it, not for all the other stuff, but because my dad's doing it.
right. And that, and that's that's an important one that I think is, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that, because we know that it's hard being in law enforcement, for sure. It's hard being black and being in law enforcement, for sure.
Yep.
And but it's also that understanding that there are people in law enforcement, and when you know those people in law enforcement who are, stand up individuals, who are people of honor and are trustworthy, like, it reminds you that there is a piece of it that you can be a part of,
Hmm.
because that's what you see, right? That's what
Right.
you want to be. It's not because you want to be, and some people do, not because you want to be the bully to somebody else, right? It's
Hmm.
because you want to be the stand up person that is, standing up for the people who can't stand up for themselves. All right.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. All right. So what about your
And
daughter?
then,
What's what?
so with my daughter, man, and as she's getting older, she's starting to drive now and all these things. I, it might sound crazy, but when my daughter came to me and was like, "Dad, I want you to teach me how to drive," I was like, "Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, right?" You got to always say between mom and dad, and she's like, "But dad, no, I want you to teach me how to drive."
Okay.
And the other
All
thing that
right.
I love, man, I love when I hear my daughter say, but dad said, right? It's like music to my ears. No matter what's going on, like she might be talking about whatever she's talking about, but when I hear her say, "Yeah, but dad said," even when, even when like when she's debating with her brother, she's like, "Yeah, but dad said," it just be fun. Okay, all right, I get it. Like there's a level of honor there between a father and his daughter. Yeah, but dad
Yeah.
said. I'm like, yeah, I said.
And she been listening. That means she been listening too, right? For
Yeah.
sure.
Yep.
That's a big deal. That's a
Yep.
big deal. Cool, cool. That's fantastic. I appreciate you sharing those. Um, so shoot, we actually only got a couple more questions. You about to run through all my questions here. I so
All right.
the next question that I have is, uh and it's gonna be hard for you to answer, because y'all really ain't, you and your wife really haven't dealt with baby things yet, parenting
Yeah.
things yet together, right?
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit from your older kids, but what role do you think you will play, or what role have you played with your kids? Are you the, the easy parent, easygoing
Hmm.
parent? Are you the stern parent? Are you the, what kind of parent do you see yourself as?
You know what, man? That's honestly, it's first of all, let me give those to my wife, right? Honestly, it's not going to be a hard question to ask because, man, my wife, even though I came into our marriage with two teenage kids, man, she jumped right in head first. And there are some times where like there might be something going on with the kids, and she's had to like give me perspective. Well, you should think about this or you should think about that. And obviously, we're in the first year of our marriage. We did not plan to get pregnant like in the first year, but I'm so glad, honestly, it put my heart at ease to see how she even dealt with being a bonus mom, right? I mean,
Mm,
she just jumped right in. And so with the new baby, I know, I know how that dynamic is going to work based upon the way that she's dealt with my older kids, and the older kids love her, and she loves them too. But if I have to, I still a line from my mom to answer your question. My mother calls me the marshmallow dad. That's what she said. She always argued that my daughter tells me what to do. um, but like me, man, I'm a big man. I got a deep voice. I'm physically imposing. So I still love the fact that because I'm so much bigger than my kids, and if I drop the bass in my voice a little bit or get that look, I still get a certain reaction.
there you
Um,
go.
so and even when their mom, like with my older children, if their mom's like, I'm gonna call your dad, like things kind of get together. And here's why I love it. Because it doesn't really require me to do a whole lot.
Right, right,
Like, I,
right,
I don't have to come in heavy. They still are like, oh yeah, no, don't tell my dad. So it allows me to be good cop most of the time because it's like, yeah, I don't want to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah,
and if I'm
yeah.
being honest, like there have been some times where I probably should have been a little tougher on the kids. There have been some times I probably should have not negotiated, what I said.
Mm,
But
okay.
but honestly, man, my God has truly blessed me. I got great kids, man. I got let you. I can brag about my kids for a second. My daughter,
Yeah,
man,
absolutely.
she's in she's in 10th grade. She's a 4.29 GPA student. She's had straight A's in middle school. She got a B one time and cried, John. I mean, like cried
Ooh,
like a baby because she because she got a B. So she's an awesome student. My son, what's that saying? He like cool as a cucumber. Man, he's a guy who doesn't get rattled, man. He's always down for the cause. He's easy to deal with. So man, God bless me with tremendous kids, man. I really I can't thank God enough that I would never use the word easy, but true my kids, man, they have been great kids to raise. And I know what I was as a kid. So some of the things that I took my mama through, I haven't had to experience those things, and I pray that I won't.
right.
But yeah, they've been great parents. They really have. They really have. So I
Great.
just as long as I'm still the size I am and they still smaller than me, I'm gonna keep using it to my advantage.
There you go. Hey, no, I appreciate that, and I know it is. It's always it's a balancing act, right? Because they need to
Mhm.
understand that there are repercussions to their
Yep.
actions. They need to
Yep.
understand that you can be the parent that can let things go, but you can also be the one that says, "Hey, look, we ain't doing this today. This
That's
ain't
right.
how it's gonna
Yep.
go down." Right. And so I asked that question somewhat is tongue in cheek. I like to believe that both parents have a part where they have to be the stern parent, and both
Hmm.
parents have the part where they have to be the soft parent, right? They have to,
Yep.
you reach a point, you have a moment where your kids need you to be each of those things, right? And sometimes
Yeah.
they need to know that daddy has a soft side, or dad, or whatever you call yourself, right, has a soft side, and they can come to him, come to you if they need something. But they also need to know that, you know, daddy ain't don't play that, right?
Yeah.
So
Because you also can't just let your kids run amok either and do whatever they want to
right.
do. Listen, at the end of the day, God is a God that shows grace, but He also disciplines. And I tell people
Hmm.
all the time, listen, I'm so glad we live in Old Testament times. If you go back and look at the Old Testament, you read that thing. Listen, we serve a God who was swift with His judgment, right? Like I'm talking about what no time negotiation or debate. I'm talking about. look, I'm sick of this, and I'm going. This is how I'm bringing a hand down, right? So I said all that to say, but it starts early. It starts early on, right? Because it's always easier to tighten the screws once always easier to loosen the screws once you tighten them, right? So I
Right.
think my kids know what the hard line is. They know this. All right, listen, I went too far with this because now I'm about to, So I think when you establish your red line early on, your kids know. And the other thing is that kids equate love to discipline. They don't want parents who gonna let them do whatever they want to do.
Right.
That's just my belief. I mean,
Right.
some people might disagree, but you discipline, you even chastise in love. You're not doing
Right.
it just because. You do it in love so that you can avoid these things in the future. And if you do it in love, your kids know where that hard line is. Well, I better not cross that line because
Yeah.
I know what's coming down from dad.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. That's a great point. I appreciate that, and that is exactly how I try to parent. I will say that I have a temper sometimes, and sometimes that temper does get the best of me. And
Mm-hmm.
we haven't talked about this at length, but one of the things that has always been very important to me is understanding and trying to remember that children um is a gift from God, and one thing that He's trying to teach us is patience.
Yep.
Um, and that is one of the biggest things. I'm like, yeah, he is. He trying. They say the kids
Listen,
working your nerves. That's
the old saints used to say, "Be careful when you ask God for patience. When you pray that prayer,
mhm,
be careful when you pray that prayer, because you might not want the
mhm.
test that's going to come with it."
That's right.
But
That's right.
but
That's right.
but man, John, I agree with you. I always, like, a lot of people in my life too. A lot of people have said that I don't necessarily look at myself as being. I'm pretty mild mannered. I don't get too ruffled. And I've always been, you're so patient. Like, you're so patient. You're so understanding. You know what I say? It's because I'm a parent. It's because
Mhm.
I'm a parent. There's nothing in this world has taught me better patience, or greater patience rather, than being a dad.
Yeah. 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 I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. All right. Well, this has been great. I have appreciated this, and I have gotten a lot out of this. This is part of the reason why I do this podcast, honestly, is for the opportunity to have people, whether they know it or not, pour into me
Hey
as I
man,
go
that's
through
what it's
my
all about,
fatherhood
brother.
journey. Yeah, man. I see. So what I've learned a lot. I appreciate this, and before I let you go, I like to ask a little fun question in these spotlights before I
Sure.
let people go. So, um, the final question here is: if you had to pick a father, a fantasy father, like a television father, movie father, or whatever, that you would like put yourself in the same vein as,
Uh
which one would you choose? And I have a list of them, and it doesn't have to be on
huh.
this list, but I'm gonna start with my list, and then if it's not on this list, then you can pick somebody else. So I have
Okay.
Uncle Phil,
Mm-hmm.
okay, James Evans, Carl Winslow,
Hmm.
Heathcliff Huxtable, or Andre Johnson.
Hmm. So you probably would. I was like, Carl Winslow, because he's the police, and I like Carl Winslow. I like Carl Winslow. I like Carl because there were a couple times Carl got, you mess with his kids, Carl got upset. I don't know if you remember that one episode where
Oh yeah,
the two white cops harassed Eddie,
yes,
and
yes,
Carl turned it out in the restaurant. But
yeah,
I'm
he
gonna pick
sure
Uncle
did. I
Phil,
remember that.
man.
Uncle
I'm gonna
Phil,
take. I'm gonna
Uncle
go with.
Phil.
I'm gonna go with Uncle Phil. I'm gonna go with
Okay,
Uncle Phil.
okay. Who
Uncle Phil, that's
also
my guy.
who also went in on the police officers
Didn't he?
when Carlton and Will got pulled over for driving the
Oh,
car.
yep, he sure
He
did.
went
Went in
he
on
went
him.
off on them. That's right. He went in on them. He's like, I am their counsel. And
But let me tell you why I chose Uncle Phil, man. I'm gonna tell you why I chose Uncle Phil, because there was one episode. Listen, and every time this episode was on, I cry, even to
oh
this
man,
day.
don't I hope it ain't this is one I think you about to talk about. All right, go ahead. Go
It
ahead.
was
Go
the
ahead. Go ahead.
episode when Will's dad came back,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
came around for a little while, and he rolled out.
Yep.
Man, and Will. was asking, like, man, why don't he love me? This moment. First of all, Will got on Uncle Phil's nerves, right?
Yep.
At least that's how he showed it. But Uncle Phil would have gave his life for a boy not even, he wasn't even his blood nephew. He was his
Right.
wife's nephew.
Right.
Took him into his house, raised him like his son. I mean, he would have given his life for that boy. It was that episode I said, man, that's the man I want to be. I want
Yeah.
to be just like Uncle Phil.
Yep.
It's just
Yep.
like, and
There you go.
the other episode was, and this is a funny one. Remember when one of them, when they thought they were good at pool and they got hustled, and Uncle Phil
Yes.
went down there. But so it was those things, right? It was even when they were being knuckleheads, Uncle Phil had their back
Yeah.
all the time. So I
Yeah.
always want my kids to know, look, it does not matter. My
Yeah.
dad got my back.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna be a crazy dad. I'm gonna be a loving dad. I'm gonna be a psycho dad. I'm gonna be a cheer dad. It doesn't matter what it is my kids want to do. All three of them. I want to
Yeah.
always know I can always, always, always count on my dad.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. Man, that
Yeah.
was awesome. I love that. And that's exactly, and I don't have no, like, most. I've actually had people pick Andre Johnson.
Really?
They more recent from
Mm.
I never even watched Blackish like that. So I might have lost my black card by saying that. But
Because I ain't really never get into it either. I thought the show was funny. I mean, the episodes I saw, I
yeah,
thought it was funny, but nah, man, I'm an old
yeah,
school guy, man. I'm going
right.
with one OG, man.
There you go. There
And
you go. I'm right there with
the
you.
only reason I ain't picked Daddy Evans because they were broke, man. No one
They were.
broke.
There's a whole. I ain't even gonna get into the whole thing about how there's a whole conspiracy that Florida Evans was actually bad for that family. Um, there's a whole conspiracy about it, and how she kept James from being successful, from taking jobs. She kept the kids in the ghetto, and then she got married and moved out and left the kids in the ghetto. Okay, it's a whole thing.
What?
It's a
Well,
whole thing,
James
and they
died. First of all, what was she supposed to do?
they prayed to a white Jesus and everything, and it was like they got
That's
mad at
crazy,
Ned the
man.
Wino Jesus and all that, and it was like it's a whole conspiracy theory around it. But anyway,
That's
that's a
crazy.
that's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother thing. But man, Pastor Bernard, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I have enjoyed this so much. Thank you for coming on the show. Um, for those who may be interested in being on the show, love to have you. You can always you can always email me at thedaddyconfessions@gmail.com if you're interested in being on the show. Love to have you. You can do a spotlight. You can come on for one of the topics. Whatever you want to do, we can do the whole thing. Also, if you are interested in following us on Instagram, I post stuff on there every once in a while. Yeah, Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram. The next show will air on October 19th. We are doing every other week because I'm a dad. I'm busy. I can't do this every week, but love to have you check in on the show. And again, Pastor Bernard, thank you so much for being here on Daddy Confessions. And hopefully, by the time people are watching this, Commanders are playing some good football. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully,
And
things are moving
celebrate
in
the
our
W.
direction. That's right. That's right. That's right. So, all
Hey,
right.
John, thanks
Have a
for
good
having me,
night.
man. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the invite. I'm honored, man. I had a great time with you.
Oh, we're gonna have you back. I'm gonna have you back for sure. For sure. All right.
Appreciate it.
All
All
right.
right, take
Well,
care, brother.
everybody listening, thank you. Peace. All right.